But then at some point, people have an insight, and the very same things are either there, but they just look different. They're in a new light. They're just like, oh yeah, it just suddenly wasn't as important anymore. Like the withdrawal didn't matter, or what. And I'm like, so what? Like that's a signal of an insight. Now that happens to basically everybody. If you talk to anybody who's really profoundly found their freedom, they'll say, well, it was a bit like this, and it was a bit like this, and then all of a sudden, I just kind of it just didn't make sense anymore. There we go. Scott's laughing because I've counted us all in. We need to be counted in, man. Like,
I don't know. I
uh,
struggle with that. I struggle with
My,
the count in.
you're
my
musical.
favorite for the YouTube viewers, my favorite is three things. When you count, Sam,
Stop it.
seven.
Enough of it. Right. Before we get lost down that ridiculous thing, we are talking about willpower and why you don't need more of it. And something that we've kind of spoken about a lot over the years, but just a subject that might be nice to return to. And I thought we could start off with an image that I often share with people around why, when we think we need willpower and sort of calling into question whether it really is the magic thing. Do we really need more willpower, or is there something
Yeah.
else going on? So the way I often put it is the behavior that we're struggling with, or that we want to transcend, or whatever, like the behavior that we're, and that could be anything: drinking, gambling, I don't know, it could be any kind of substance or behavior, whatever it might be. That's the last domino. So it's the visible thing that's happening in your life. It's the last domino to fall, but preceding that are all of the other dominoes. So all of the reasons why that behavior makes sense. And most approaches try and tackle the last domino. So they say, if I just stop the behavior and if I stop it for long enough through whatever means I need, tools, tactics, willpower, whatever, then if I can hold on to that reality for long enough, things will sort themselves out. Now, we all come from a different perspective, I think, which is that it's insight that makes the difference. And the thing that's going to get someone, that last domino can kind of vanish, if you like, or stop making sense, is insights further back up the chain. So insights into why we're doing what we're doing. Why is it that it makes sense? Are we trying to kind of manage feelings, avoid feelings, whatever it might be? Because as soon as we have insights in there, willpower just doesn't seem so valid. And so in a world where just changing the behavior is the silver bullet, if you like, willpower would make sense. But I think all of us are kind of agreed that actually the behavior is trying to think, it's the visible side of a deeper structure.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
the
Mm.
insights into the structure that will make the difference. And then willpower isn't so useful. So that was the frame where we kind of wanted to start. And let's just see what comes up between us.
Yeah. I just think I love how you found that. I think it's so important because it's like that is the obvious place to start, right? And so going back to the beginning of um, the kind of realization I had about booze, the only thing that I needed to focus on was drinking less, and at the same time wanting to drink more. And so prior to the realization that I had, my only option was do dry January and focus on not drinking for January. And I knew that I could do it because of willpower, right? I knew that I had enough willpower, enough drive, enough determination, enough grit to get through what I thought was going to be a really bloody awful month of deprivation and missing out and I would have done it. Absolutely, I would have done it. And the energy would have been heavy. I'd have been counting the days to get, it would have been like a prison sentence, to get to the 1st of February and then have what one of my lovely clients termed as a bonanza moment. We can all imagine what that is. And so lucky me, having the insight courtesy of Mr. Pinyard around what food actually
Opinion.
Pinyard. Pinyard.
Sorry.
Accepted. Either way is accepted, to be clear.
Oh God!
I couldn't help myself. I'm so sorry.
I'm too old. It's in my head. He's always been Pinyard. So I see it's stuck.
I've
on the
started
face.
correcting myself every time I say it in my head now.
No, I can't. I'm too old for that nonsense. Not that your name's nonsense. Anyway,
It is
I
nonsense.
understand.
It's
It
nonsense.
is a little bit nonsense. I get it.
Totally nonsense. I mean,
I understand.
all made up.
sorry to all the
courtesy-
opinions out there. Your name is lovely.
Well, courtesy of Mr. Scott, as we know, I had a bit of a realization around
Mm.
the mechanism of booze, which was new information. So here's the insight that's smacked me around the chop. And what that opened up to me was this idea of being willing to be wrong. Oh shit! Well, I always thought that alcohol relaxed me. I felt that that was as true as the sky being blue, and there was no other possibility. And yet, I've just been proven entirely wrong. I haven't believed that my entire adult life. So this was the right. Well, I'm willing to be wrong about everything, and that one opening took me back, up the chain. So instead of focusing on the behaviour, that was the byproduct of being curious about, well, what else don't I know? What else have I been wrong about? And I remember going into that January, and my only thought was, I'm just going to see what happens. I'm not drinking right now, and I'm just going to see what happens. And that January was a really different experience than otherwise it would have been had I just been focusing on the behaviour. There was no willpower required that January at all, like none. And that was that was a huge surprise to me, because any time I'd ever taken a break from booze before, it was only willpower. So this is really, really good news, because when we're not exhausting ourselves exerting willpower, then we can turn that energy towards something else.
Mm.
Yeah. And that looks key to me. Like it seems that we credit willpower with, well, this, like, it's obviously the case that we can kind of white knuckle through something, right? The question is that really kind of stacking the deck in favor of shifting things longer term? Or are we in this pattern of like white knuckling back to the thing, white knuckling back to the thing? And I think the kind of strange, well, I don't know if it's strange, but the truth is that a lot of the things that the mind is kind of worrying and it's up to, it's not where the juice comes from. I mean, pretty much all the work we do on the platform and any of the programs that we put together is kind of really double clicking on the idea that, yeah, that's not really where it is. We share the metaphor of the lazy river and floating down it and having these insights. And there's a part of us that thinks, but I have to do something. Like,
Yeah.
what are you saying? Just like fucking sit here and not like that's not helpful, Sam. I've tried that. But what we're kind of pointing to something deeper. Like we're going to do what we are going to do until something else makes sense. And I, for sure, use willpower. And in the couple of years that I was trying to really figure this thing out, I was, using willpower, struggling through. Then I'd have periods where it seemed like I didn't need any of that. Then it would seem like I did. And it's just a really fascinating thing to explore because, you're
Mm.
right, Ellie. It's like if we get to the root of what's really going on and get beyond the behavior and really come to recognize what is it that what's the behavior trying to do? Like if this behavior was trying to do something for me, what is it? Like, what is it that I need in this
Yeah.
moment? And like you said, Ellie, like that kind of need that you needed to like have moments of respite and chill out and relax. I mean, humans, right? There's these, but like this kind of innocent attempt to create that through a substance, and then the recognition and realization that, oh, like bigger picture, this thing is pouring more anxiety into my life. Like I've seen that now. I've had this insight from a zoomed out perspective. Like it's it's filling my body with of stress chemicals and all this kind of stuff. That then opened up a different, a new level of understanding, I would say, where suddenly it didn't make sense that, like, because until that moment, trying to stop doing something like you beautifully put it, trying to stop doing something that actually you still want to do, like you said, you didn't actually want to stop. Well, that is literally kind of like a definition for willpower and white knuckling. But the moment we open up to a different possibility, which is, wow, maybe all the things that I've been looking for is available to me, even if I'm not engaging in the substance. We're in a
Mm.
different world altogether. So a lot of the stuff that makes the difference to people, it kind of weirdly isn't necessarily insights into alcohol. Like it can be really, really helpful to learn about alcohol science and the brain and the body. But it's the, like you always say, Scott, we talked about identity before, like the deeper level identity stuff of like coming to
Yeah.
recognize, wow, I can experience this human thing without needing to reach for that. And so I think this is key because I think most approaches stop there at the behavior bit.
Yeah.
But as your story points to, Ellie, like one insight and the whole thing can look entirely different. We can rely on different things other than willpower in those moments, right?
I really like how you said beyond the behavior, Sam, because that really is what we're talking about here. And I one of the ways that I talk about this, and it's kind of a little bit cliche, but like it's almost like drinking is the symptom, not the problem,
Yeah.
right? So like we adapt to using alcohol in certain ways because of emotions we're afraid to feel or experiences we're afraid to have or whatever. It's a long list of things. And when we begin to address that stuff starts to change. Like I remember in my journey to quit drinking, well, before I actually started quitting drinking, I tried to change as many other things in my life as possible, like in the desperate hope that I wouldn't have to quit. So I started working on my finances and I started working on fitness. I trained and I did, events, and like I started working on my relationship. I started working on my thinking. I was doing all of this stuff
What did you do with
in
your beard? What
what's
did you
that?
do with your beard? Did you
This
chop
was
the
this
beard?
this was pre-beard.
Holy fuck! So that's when you grew your beard.
It's PB.
Hang on a
Yes,
minute.
it was PB.
I,
Yes.
I might need to see a photograph of this. I don't believe that you've never had one.
I
But
do
your
have a
face,
chin.
it
It's a
must be so.
shock.
Your face must look so small without a beard on it, though.
It's terrifying.
Do you know what I
I
mean?
yes. Anyway, I was like in that phrase and I was like doing all of this stuff and obviously in the back of my head I knew like drinking was like kind of the big thing, right? But like changing all of these other things, I'm making progress, seeing things, my drinking changed. And I'm actually positive that like had I not made those other changes, I wouldn't have seen what I saw when it came to quitting drinking. When I started to recognize that it was a symptom of this other stuff. So like finances is one I always talk about. My financial life was absolute shit back then. Making a few changes, having a little bit less stress translated into my drinking life, right? I saw that. I saw the change. And it wasn't obvious at first. Like when I first quit drinking, I was actually hyper focused on drinking and not drinking and all of that stuff. But very quickly, I began to see that I can relax into whatever those other things are. And I see this with people I coach all the time. Like and I'm sure you guys see it too. Well, in the membership, even, I was just talking with someone about this the other day. Like a lot of questions start with alcohol, and then we very quickly move on to a deeper topic.
Sure.
And that's because like I think the three of us have learned to see like, wait, it's something beyond there. And as we start exploring those things, that's where freedom comes from. Like that's where freedom came from for me. It wasn't fixing any particular problem. It was gaining more of or having more of an insight that I could handle those problems. It was realizing that like it's gonna be okay if I deal with whatever problem might be in front of me.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why we talk about this stuff, right? Because you could
Mhm,
I have met people, we all have met people that have been they haven't drunk alcohol for 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 years, and yet they feel like they walked out of one prison and into another one. And the thought
mhm.
experiment I often talk about, if I could take away if I could make it literally impossible for you to drink, but you kept your thinking about drinking, would that be freedom? And most people can see, well, no, there's it's not really about whether the behavior is happening. It's about how I'm looking at this from the inside. And so the reason we're having this conversation is that it's kind of at the heart of the freedom conversation where constantly battling with yourself. Or Ellie, when we first started the podcast and our strapline, like, let's make life bigger together, that was at the heart of all of this, right? Not needing to feel that we need to avoid certain things or not be able to go to bars,
Mm.
not be able to hang out with friends for, but because the reason we don't, because we'd have to use so much willpower to be there. I mean, look, it's okay. Like, if anyone's listening to this and they're like, "Shit, that's where I am right now," that's fine. Like, that was me for a while too, like trying to figure stuff out. But it's just being open to the possibility that you're not lacking willpower. Like, if you keep thinking, "Well, I just need more of that. I need more of that," or I need more of something. I just call that into question. Not to say that we can't use tools and tactics, not to say that there's anything wrong with, like, there's been plenty of times where I've felt like I've had to grin and bear it for a bit, and then the next morning I've gone, "Oh, I'm so glad I didn't drink," and then I've had a real insight in that moment. It's not binary, like willpower equals, you know, uh, not helpful at all, and the other side is helpful. It's not like that. We can have a profound
No,
insight through
Yeah.
over like getting to the point where we're so sick of using willpower. We're like, fuck, it can't be there. It must be something else, right? What were you going to say, Ellie?
I was just going to say, I think that you know that like you have a responsibility to take some form of action, right? So it's like the picture of karma yoga, right? That your responsibility is to what's in front of you, not to the outcome. So the releasing of the need for it to be a particular way, but just opening up to possibility, um, it's freeing and transformational. So you can, I think the thing is, you can trust yourself. It's almost like a different way of looking at willpower. So as opposed to willpower in tension and clinging on, there is a power of will within you which is driving you towards something. And you don't need to know what that thing is. It's going to take you there. And your part to play in it is, do you go kicking and screaming and getting in the way of it with a lot of tension and resistance? Or do you soften around the edges? Do you open up to your experience and allow yourself to be taken in the energetic flow that's uniquely yours? Because you go in there one way or the other.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's the thing, right? You're talking about that's the dropping of the resistance to what's happening. I mean, there's different ways we say it, but that's like being realizing you're going to be okay no matter what. Like you're going in this direction, you can handle it. That's a tough, at least for me, that was a really tough thing to see. Um, After years of feeling like I've been just kicked around, it was like I think a lot of us get into this, by the time as we get older, we get into this like defensive posture of like, I'm fighting off life. I'm fighting off work problems. I'm fighting off family problems. I'm fighting off these problems. And it like stress becomes a way of life. And uh, it creates like this idea that we can't let go, Ellie, that like we need to be the one steering the ship. That's fucking exhausting.
yeah,
It is. And when you start to play with this a little bit, and you can kind of do it with the less risky stuff to begin with, but once you start playing with that, like, well, do I really need to control everything? Do I really need to do I really have responsibility for everything? When you start to like let things go, quite literally, it's amazing how life does its thing and you're carried. And
Yeah.
I've coined this before as like you can achieve far, far more by doing far, far less. People like look at you as if you're a bit mad. Well, go and try it for yourself and find out. And it's not this kind of it's not a passive like, oh well, I'll just not do anything. There's still an engagement with life, but it's with a real different attitude and energy,
Yeah.
and your life will transform as a result of it. And everybody is, even if you feel completely bound and caught up, that can disappear in a second. You know?
And often does. Yeah.
it's no, and I think that's the just to give some hope, isn't it? That because I know for me, like these things like from where we're all stood, whatever we're doing now, uh, it looks the way it looks, and it didn't always look like that. I'm guessing for all of us, right? It look, it
Yeah,
could have looked different. So, for now, it like kind of seems simple to me, in terms of like, oh, this is very much about what we've been avoiding and like being and knowing that we can experience that, then the willpower kind of falls away in the light of seeing that. That's really rich for me at the moment. But I mean, for however many years of my life, I was avoiding all sorts of stuff. There was all sorts of
mm,
stuff I didn't want to feel. So it's, we
mm,
have these conversations knowing that people are going to be where they're going to be and they're going to hear what they're able to hear. And I love what you said
Mm.
about, we did an episode a while back, Ellie. I can't remember where we spoke about willpower versus the power of will. Um,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and
I'm
the
sure you
power,
did.
that kind of like the kind of will and the yogic sense of like that transformative kind of expression or movement that's happening. And it's I think it looks kind of central to lean into that. And it yeah, it's just opening up to the possibility that there is something that is kind of uh got the steering wheel actually. And that like I was chatting to somebody only this morning actually, and I was saying like, are you open to the possibility that many of the things that you think you've been up to in your conscious mind, it's just kind of stories that we make up about how things have changed, when the reality is that we've had these insights all along, and like we're guiding ourselves through, and then we go, oh well, it was this and it was that and it was this, but really it's like that point that we get to where we suddenly go, fuck, I can't keep doing this anymore. Did we make that moment happen, or is it an insight that comes upon us? Like, so the very
Yes.
movement towards stopping drinking, or the very movement towards transcending, so like, and moving beyond a behavior or whatever, isn't kind of created in the way that we relate to it. Then when we tell the story later, we say, "Well, I decided to stop drinking," don't we?
Yeah.
But
Well,
in
that's
that
what it looks
moment,
like, though.
yeah, but in that moment, it's worth
Mm.
investigating though, because there's a real, because you're right, it totally looks like that, but that beautiful
Mm.
movement towards a different direction is like you're being carried that way, right?
Yeah. But this is why I think, the keeping of good company and having access to coaching, there's a plug for the membership, is really important because,
I agree.
it, like, there was one of our lovely members who you guys know very well as I do. She called the environment, did she call it an insight incubator? She did,
Yeah.
didn't she? Yes. So this insight friendly space. So yes, we're not in charge of um, those insights necessarily, but you can create an environment where they are more likely to appear. And so
Right.
surrounding yourself with good company, with other beings that are, um, making the kind of bold choice that you're making and questioning things that perhaps, most of the adult population in the world aren't. Having access to coaching like that experience that you just described from this morning, Sam, I had a really similar one this morning actually. There was a lady and the way that she said something, I was like looking upon her like, oh my God, I remember thinking exactly that. And the words that came out of her mouth were, so she'd had a coaching conversation recently and something had opened up in her in terms of like uh, the way that she viewed things that had happened in her past and then how that related to her current, or how she's relating to life on that place currently. And she said the words, I know I've got a lot of work to do. And I thought, oh, that's really cute. And I said to her afterwards, I said, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know you've got a lot of work to do? And it just hadn't occurred to her that maybe she hasn't got a lot of work to do. It's just this, oh, right, well, I've seen this thing. So clearly here's the responsibility. I've got all of this stuff to metabolize. I have to process these things or whatever. And at the end of the conversation, she was kind of like laughing at like, not like laughing at like how silly of me, but just like, oh, like that would be quite kind of neat if I have got loads of work to do. Like, oh, wow. But it's having these conversations with other beings. It's this kind of environment where we can question and see the things that are otherwise unseen. That's where things can kind of, like, it's happening anyway, but there's an acceleration, I think, in this kind of environment. So
Yeah, yeah.
come and join membership.
We run the assumption, I think, unconsciously, that because it took us a while to get so fucked up sometimes, like, well, it took me 10 years to get
Yeah.
this messed up or whatever. We think it will take me ages to unravel it. But,
Yeah.
and, gosh, I think it's in one of Jamie Smart's books. He's talking about even the language that we use, like, this problem is deep rooted, or the kinds of things that we say.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I've got a lot of work to do. But what we don't realize is that insight doesn't work in an iterative, doesn't, it can be iterative in the sense that it's like one thing and the next thing, slow evolutionary change. But and it's a little bit like, someone was describing it as like a tanker that's kind of slowly turning and turning and turning and turning. But then it's also the case that every now and again, it's like the tanker like melts, turns into a speedboat, fucks off 3 miles in one direction, and then returns back into a tanker or something. It's like
Yeah.
we have these moments of profound insight, and they're not bound by the same like deterministic, like we can have these I don't, this is hard to even put into words. We can have a moment where we fall awake to the truth of who and what we are, and there's an update to our perceptual reality. And when we come back together again, when our sense of identity comes back together again, we're not in the same world. And this fascinates me because for everybody who's on this journey, you'll hear people say, I used loads of willpower. It was really difficult. And if you ask them why is it so hard, they'll give you a long list of all of the reasons why they're in this prison. The withdrawals like this is horrible. But then at some point, people have an insight, and the very same things are either there, but they just look different. They're in a new light. They're just like, oh yeah, it just suddenly wasn't as important anymore. Like the withdrawal didn't matter, or what. And I'm like, so what? Like that's a signal of an insight. Now that happens to basically everybody. If you talk to anybody who's really profoundly found their freedom, they'll say, well, it was a bit like this and it was a bit like this. And then all of a sudden, it just didn't make sense anymore. I just kind of
Yeah.
stepped into a new world. And that speaks to something that is, mm, uh, it's outside, it's not from, it's from outside of willpower. Like willpower is kind of like, the energy of willpower is kind of it's all in form. So it's sort of like grinding the gears to try and get somewhere. As where insight is like a different fuel. Like it just sort of
Mm.
like comes from somewhere else and impacts us. And so that, I know that that's kind of, and like you said, Ellie, if you want to stack the deck in favor of that, to me, that's about connection. It's about a space where you feel safe. It's about a space where you don't have to try and pretend that you're somewhere that you're not, all this stuff, where it's okay to be vulnerable. I mean, insight can strike us in any moment. And actually, it's often in our most difficult moments we have the profound insights that go on to change our lives. That can absolutely happen. But
Mm.
it's also the case that if our head is so full of willpowering or busyness or stress that like we often don't have much time to like take a minute to breathe and for something new to come in. So both of those things look true. It's sometimes the desperation of our current worldview just not working that leads to an insight, but then also the beauty of being in somewhere that we feel held. And I mean I know what I prefer. Like my preferred method is not to let my life go, start getting really, really hairy and then have the moment. Although that used to be my method of old.
Used to be the way to go. Yeah.
These days, I prefer to hang out with in good company and explore things that fascinate me, and just like
Mm.
let life kind of take care of itself.
I think it
Gentler
means
on the
it
nervous
means a
system.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, Scott, I was just saying it's gentler on the nervous system
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit.
definitely
Mm.
Yeah.
recommended.
Mm.
I was gonna say it means a lot to be in those groups because I know, like, personally, hearing other people share opens things up for me, and some of the biggest insights I've had have been simultaneously, Sam, at a very low point, but also in discussion.
Yeah.
It's like, there's this methodology of processing, at least for me, um, that comes through speaking. And so being at one of those low points and talking about it with someone in a space where it feels like, hey, we should explore this stuff, like it almost like, I don't know, like insights hit me verbally almost. And like I say something, I'm like, is that true? Wow, that feels true. And there we are.
Beautiful.
And if folks haven't had the experience of being in the kind of environment we're talking about, then they should come along to the monthly call, the 3 monthly call.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure. Yeah, yeah,
we can drop the link for that with the show notes. But there's an opportunity to just come and hang out and see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
No pressure, no, you don't even have to have your camera on if you don't want. If you just want to come and kind of lurk in the background and see what goes on. But you'll get a feel for it, So it's zero cost for that. It's like just come along and see how it feels.
yeah, yeah. And by that same token, somewhere to come and be there with your camera on and realize the safety in that, like
Yeah,
whatever
Mm.
makes sense to you. But yeah, and it doesn't like whether it's our world or like community and just being able to talk, like even if you've got one, like if you're sat and you're feeling alone and that you feel like you're grinding it out and you're using willpower and you feel like you can't talk about it, even if if your next action step is just to get one person who you can talk to and be honest with, and to whatever degree feels possible right now, and start having voice notes or conversations with that friend or whatever, that will be
Yeah.
a game changer because it just seems like you said, Scott, it's sort of like there's William Whitecloud in one of his books, he uses this cool distinction I like between action and doing. Yeah, and so action is the next common sense step. It like that makes sense. Like that's action. doing is all of the things we need to do before we feel like we're ready, before we can take the next action step. Most of us are involved in a huge amount of doing and we're not taking the action steps. Like, oh,
Mm,
well, I couldn't talk about that until this and until that. And I'd have to know that it was okay. And I'm a bit scared that they'll think this of me and all this kind of stuff. When actually the movement to just kind of have a chat with someone. And like, even if you feel like you can't talk to someone who's close to you, there's loads of opportunities to talk to people that you've, just do something in that regard. Start sharing, talk to someone about it.
yeah,
Start There's way more room outside your head than in it. So and the moment that you start doing that, like there's something about like it's like when you speak, you sort of like call upon yourself to like speak your worldview out in front of yourself. And sometimes you just kind of you hear your you hear yourself or something like
yeah,
that, and you're like you just suddenly breaks a spell, or you have an insight, or you see something. So,
yeah.
just constantly ruminating, being stuck in your own thought patterns and in your own kind of echo chamber in your head. Yeah, it's just sometimes it's so profoundly helpful to just do one thing, to just talk
Mm,
to one person, and then build up to joining a community, or go or to jump in head first, whatever makes sense to you. But I don't to me, the idea that there's anybody kind of like suffering in silence is just sucks, because I know that I've been there, and I wouldn't want that for
yeah.
anybody. So, yeah.
And
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get us back to the sort of theme of like what we were talking about here, of this idea of like willpower, like what we're talking about is like maybe there's another way to relax into seeing things.
Yeah.
I so wish I had someone tell me that a long time ago when I was working on this, because it really felt like I just needed to like get stronger, when in reality I just needed to let go a little bit.
Beautiful. Nice. Well, there we go.
It's a good
We're at
place.
half an hour on willpower, and I'm sure there's plenty more to this. And if, like we've mentioned a few times, if anybody ever wants to come and poke us and say, "Tell me more about that," you can do it on the free calls. You can do it in the platform that we've got. They're
Yeah.
both there, and we'll put the in the show notes. We'll always have the link to sign up for the free calls. And we do them in rotation, so we take one each basically. So yeah, come hang out. Awesome.
Mm.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.
Adios.
That's what I do when I don't know how to end. It works really
I
well.
just that's the best. I'm gonna clip that and put it on YouTube. Bye.